No one showed up to the CEO's paralyzed daughter's birthday party. The mansion sat decorated with golden balloons, cakes untouched, and a little girl in her wheelchair waiting with hope in her eyes. Hours passed, but the seats around her stayed empty. Just when despair settled in, the sound of small footsteps echoed at the gate. A young black boy from the neighborhood stood there, clutching a tiny, worn-out gift. With quiet courage, he asked, "Can I come in?" Neither Emma nor her powerful father could have imagined how that single question would shake an entire community to its core. Emma Whitmore was no ordinary child. Born into privilege as the daughter of Robert Whitmore, the CEO of one of the largest investment firms in the city, she lived in a world of abundance, but not acceptance. A tragic car accident had left her paralyzed from the waist down, and ever since, the once bustling halls of the Whitmore mansion had grown eerily quiet. Friends who once crowded her birthday parties disappeared. Invitations were politely declined. The truth was harsher. Behind whispered excuses lay the cruel reality of prejudice, not just against her disability, but against any reminder of imperfection in a world obsessed with appearances. Robert, a man feared in boardrooms and respected, on Wall Street found himself powerless in his own home. He could buy influence, build empires, and silence rivals, but he couldn't buy his daughter's happiness. Watching Emma's smile fade year by year was a wound he couldn't heal. The birthday that should have been filled with laughter became another painful reminder. The grand ballroom was decorated like a fairy tale, streamers, chandeliers, even a hired magician waiting on standby. But the chairs stayed empty. One by one, the guests who had promised to come simply didn't show. Then came Jamal, a boy from the other side of town, raised in a modest neighborhood Robert's wealthy peers often sneered at. He had no invitation, no polished shoes, no limousine, waiting outside. What he did have was something far more rare in Robert's world: kindness. With nothing more than a small gift wrapped in newspaper, Jamal stepped into a space where no one else dared to go. At first, Emma's birthday felt like it had been saved. She laughed for the first time in months, her eyes lighting up, as Jamal pushed her wheelchair through the mansion's grand hallway. Robert watched quietly, torn between pride and shame. Pride in his daughter's smile, shame that it took a stranger's kindness to give her what all the wealth in the world could not. In the days that followed, Jamal became a regular visitor. He'd stop by after school, sometimes with a small flower plucked from a crack in the sidewalk, sometimes with nothing but his laughter and stories. Emma's world began to shift. For the first time since the accident, she had a friend who didn't look at her wheelchair before looking at her face, but not everyone saw it that way. Word spread quickly in the exclusive circles Robert belonged to. His business partners, neighbors, and the parents of Emma's former classmates whispered about the boy from the wrong side of town. At luncheons, Robert noticed the shift: polite smiles that masked judgment, conversations that stopped. When he walked into the room, it wasn't Emma's disability this time. It was Jamal's skin color, his background, his place in a city that wealthy families preferred to pretend didn't exist. The tension escalated when Emma's private school caught wind of their friendship. The head of the school board, a longtime ally of Robert in business, pulled him aside during a charity gala. With a glass of champagne in hand and a smile too rehearsed, he said words Robert would never forget. For Emma's own good, perhaps it's best to discourage certain friendships. Robert bristled, but before he could respond, the board moved swiftly. Within weeks, Jamal was accused of causing disruptions at school. Petty rules were suddenly enforced against him. His uniform wasn't proper, his homework incomplete, his presence distracting. No matter how hard Jamal tried, the system seemed rigged against him. Emma noticed. She watched as the same classmates who once ignored her now mocked Jamal. She overheard cruel words, whispered behind her back, paralyzed princess and charity case, all because she chose to befriend him. Her father's money could shield her from many things, but it couldn't shield her from prejudice that ran deeper than appearances. The pressure mounted. Parents threatened to pull their children from the school if Jamal stayed. Anonymous letters arrived at Robert's office accusing him of bringing trouble into the neighborhood. Even some of his closest advisors warned him not to get involved. Yet every night, Robert saw the same thing. His daughter smiling as Jamal read to her, her laughter echoing through the halls of their mansion. For the first time in years, she was alive again. And deep down, Robert knew, if he allowed the world to take that away, he would lose far more than a business deal. The breaking point came on a gray Thursday morning. Without warning, Jamal's mother received a letter from the school. Jamal was expelled. The reasons listed were vague: repeated disruptions, failure to uphold standards, behavior incompatible with the school's values. Everyone knew what it really meant. Emma was devastated. She had overheard her father on the phone, his voice trembling with rage as he confronted the school board. But their response was cold and final. "We cannot compromise the culture of our institution," they said. The next day, Emma made a decision that no one saw coming. When the school hosted its annual assembly, a gathering of parents, teachers, and students, Emma insisted on attending. She wheeled herself to the stage, her small frame dwarfed by the grand curtains and polished oak podium. The room fell silent. At first, her voice trembled, but then, with every word, it grew steadier. She spoke of loneliness, of birthdays spent in silence, of friends who disappeared when her wheelchair appeared. She spoke of Jamal, the boy who didn't care about her chair, who brought her back to life when no one else dared. And then, with tears streaming down her face, she said the words that cut deeper than any business deal her father had ever made. "You expelled the only person who ever treated me like I was human." The room shifted. Some parents looked away, ashamed. Others whispered angrily, their pride wounded by the public exposure. The head of the school board fumbled with his notes, his face red with discomfort. The assembly ended in chaos. Some parents rallied around Emma, demanding the decision be reversed. Others stormed out, vowing to pull their children from the school. But one thing was clear: the conversation could no longer be buried. Jamal's expulsion had ignited something larger than just a friendship. It had become a battle between comfort and conscience, between appearances and truth. And there was no going back. The weeks that followed were turbulent. Headlines spread across the city. CEO's daughter defends expelled student. The story drew attention not because of Robert's wealth, but because of Emma's courage. For the first time, people saw past the marble walls of the Whitmore estate and into the heart of a little girl who had been silenced for too long. The school board faced mounting pressure. Parents were divided. Some demanded Jamal's immediate reinstatement. Others insisted the expulsion remain, fearing their children might be influenced. But Emma refused to back down. From her wheelchair, she became a voice that the city couldn't ignore. Finally, the board relented. Jamal's expulsion was overturned. When he returned to school, it wasn't with shame, but with quiet dignity. The boy who had once walked into an empty mansion to cheer up a lonely girl now walked into classrooms where his presence carried a new weight. He was no longer invisible. As for Robert, the ordeal left him humbled. For years, he had measured success in profits, mergers, and headlines. But watching his daughter fight for Jamal taught him a truth no business empire could provide. Influence means nothing if it isn't used to lift others. He began funding scholarships for underprivileged students, not as charity, but as an attempt to rebuild the community he had once ignored. Emma's birthdays were never the same again. Her guest lists grew, not with people chasing wealth, but with those who truly cared. Jamal was always the first to arrive, his laughter echoing louder, than the chandeliers overhead. And yet, the scars of that year remained. Prejudice didn't vanish overnight. There were still whispers, still doors that closed in silence. But Emma and Jamal had proven something undeniable. One act of courage, one child asking, "Can I come in?" can force even the coldest rooms to listen. So I leave you with this. In a world where too many still look away, will you be the one to step forward? Will you ask the question that could change everything? If you've experienced or witnessed injustice, share your story in the comments. I might even make a video about it to raise awareness and justice. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so together we can spread the message further.